Learning to ride is unlike learning any other sport or skill because we're not able to get instant feedback like we are in other sports. For example, when we're running, we can get instant feedback on our pace. With a horse, it's a little bit more difficult because oftentimes we're not able to see ourselves. And there's one other reason that makes riding a little bit different that I'm going to share in today's video. I'm going to also go through the most common mistake made by beginner riders. I'm Julia, and you're listening to the EQ Network's weekly show. As a lifelong equestrian, I've worked in many different riding schools, and I've seen tons of people learn to ride for the first time. Now, it's a tricky skill to learn when you're a kid. It's even more difficult to learn as an adult. And I actually shared a video a few weeks ago about learning to ride as an adult and some tips on how you can do that better, and I'll link that in the description below. So I also mentioned in the introduction that there's another reason why learning to ride is different than learning any other skill, and that is proprioception. So proprioception is how our body maps itself in space. And there's a ton of different things that we do every single day that can change our proprioception. Things that such as driving, habits that we develop in our bodies due to our daily habits. And then we get on a horse, we bring those same habits to the horse. So today I want to go through some of the most common mistakes that beginner riders make to just sort of help you next time you are on the horse to understand how you can eliminate some of the things that your instructor might be telling you that you need to work on with this one simple tip. So as I mentioned, I've seen hundreds of riders learn to ride, and through that process, I would say that the number one thing that holds them back is holding unnecessary tension. Now, that sounds really simple. Most problems that we experience in the saddle can be directly correlated to holding too much tension. So if you've ever had your instructor tell you to lower your hands, this could actually be as a result of you've been holding the reins too high and sort of curling your upper body around because you're going into the fetal position. And what this is doing is actually holding tons of tension through your upper body, through your chest and your shoulders. Now, it's a natural response for us to go into the fetal position when we might be a little bit outside of our comfort zone. It's the nervous system's way of protecting yourself. So when we're on a horse, though, we have to really work hard to combat that. So again, if you've been told your hands are too high, it's probably because you're holding tension and you're leaning forward. You're probably pulling through your core. That's another thing, is if you're holding a lot of tension in your core, it's going to end up curling your shoulders around and you're going to be very rounded through your back. I often see riders put way too much tension in the stirrups. So you see riders who will push their legs forward and out, and this is what happens here is we really lose stability through this part of our body. So it's going to change your hip angle. It's going to bring your leg too far forward. It actually makes your leg pretty inefficient as well. We're not really using the best part of the leg. And again, that's because we're holding tension. We're holding tension in the knee, the hip. All of these joints are locked. And when those joints are locked, the horse isn't able to move properly underneath of us. Her back's not able to come up, and I'm pushing down into the saddle. Not very comfortable for her, and honestly not very comfortable for me, and it's a lot of excess work that we have to be doing. I've also seen where riders grip with the other part of their leg, so instead of pushing and putting tension through this part and holding tension here in the knee, is they'll actually curl their leg up. I'll turn Rumba a little bit so you can see a little better. They actually will pull up on their heels and they'll be holding like this. Now, the horse's flanks are very, very sensitive, so you have to be extremely careful with holding your leg back here. I've seen that actually cause a huge reaction in a lot of horses. So that is another thing that we definitely want to avoid, is holding tension through your hamstrings and your calf. And then what actually happens too is this position ends up pushing you forward, and a lot of times the rider will be pushing down on the forehand, and the horse already carries 60% of their weight on the forehand. We don't need to be adding to that as the rider, so definitely want to avoid this position. Now that we've gone through some of the downfalls of riding position, I want to talk about what we're shooting for, what the goal is for our riding position. So we've all heard the classic alignment of the ear, shoulder, hip, ankle. Now, I think it's important to make that distinction between heel and ankle. So we want to make sure that the joints are in alignment. When the joints are in alignment, we're able to absorb the horse's motion. That makes it a lot more comfortable for them and easier for them to move in a better frame. So we want that alignment again of, and here I'll just turn towards the camera a bit more, of ear, shoulder, hip, ankle. Now, one way that you can also make sure that your hips are in the correct position in the saddle is actually by using the seam of your riding pants. So you'll notice here that the seam of my pants is perpendicular to the ground. So that means that my pelvis is in the correct position with my seat bones pointing down into the saddle. I'm on the correct point of the seat bone so that I can easily stay secure in the saddle. So we want the alignment, we want to make sure that the hip is in good alignment. We also want to make sure that there's a straight line from bit to elbow. Same thing sort of applies if you ride a horse with a bitless bridle, corner of the mouth to the elbow. So that allows us to easily direct the horse. She is a little upset about some flies. We want to make sure that our hands are holding the reins. We don't want to be gripping the reins. Again, that's excess tension. Lots of horses will get very unhappy with that. We just want to have a hold on the reins so that they're not going to slip through, but they're also not too soft that if she were to, want to run just because she got spooked by something, that I didn't have, my hands on the reins, they could possibly slip through. So those are the basics of riding position. And I hope that you found this video helpful. Again, these are some of just the common pitfalls that I see beginner riders make as it relates to holding too much tension, and just a very basic overview of the position that we're looking for in the saddle. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have a problem that you're working on in your riding right now, I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next week.